Story time about how I'm the side chick and I love it. Disclaimer, this is not my story time with Cerny on Instagram. I know you're all gonna think I'm a terrible person, but personally, I thrive when people hate on me. So go ahead and say whatever you want in the comments. My married boyfriend and I met 3 months ago. He works for a really big company and I'm not gonna say which one, but he has to travel a lot for this company. So we met on one of his trips. A little information about myself. I'm 36 years old and I consider myself a queen. I am very high maintenance and I expect a lot from my boyfriends. Just this year, I've broken up with 7 men. If you can't provide for me or give me what I want, I am literally going to kick you out of my house. No broke boys allowed. I believe that men should take care of women, and I don't feel like getting a job, so I need to be taken care of. So this is what I would do to meet men. I would go to fancy golf courses and dress up really nice, and just start conversations with some of these guys. On this occasion, I met my boyfriend. He looked so good, and I saw that he was wearing a Rolex, so of course I had to go and talk to him. At first, he was not having it. He thought that I was way too young for him, but that's when I told him that I loved older men, and that if he was interested, we could go get a drink. Let's just say that he fell in love that night. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I caught my boyfriend and my best friend talking trash behind my back. After my dad yelled at my boyfriend on the phone telling him to stay away from me, my boyfriend started calling my phone non-stop. At this point, you can imagine I was super upset. My boyfriend forced me to quit my job, which I did. My best friend wasn't listening to me, and my parents were just attacking my boyfriend. So I decided to go back to my best friend's house. I pull up to her apartment building and park. I walked all the way up to her apartment, but as I got closer to the door, I could hear my boyfriend and her speaking. I immediately thought that my boyfriend was there looking for me, but something told me to stop and listen at the door. That's when I hear my best friend calling me a stupid bitch, that I don't appreciate my boyfriend, and that even though I'm a brat, I still get everything I want. Then my boyfriend says, "You should have heard her fat ass dad. I should beat the crap out of him for his disrespect." I walked in and told him I heard everything. My best friend immediately apologized and backtracked. She said she was just trying to calm my boyfriend down who was being aggressive. My boyfriend also apologized. I told him I couldn't trust them. They swore that that was the first time they'd ever done that. My best friend keeps calling me, but I won't answer her calls. Should I break up with my boyfriend? Here's a story time, but I needed to sneeze first, so give me a sec. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. I'm totally toxic. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Instead of me on Instagram. Let me start off by saying, yes, I do love my boyfriend. I'm also extremely toxic. And honestly, he is too. Here's a little backstory. We both met when we were dating other people. In fact, he was dating my best friend, and I was dating his best friend. I'm 18 and he's 19. So yeah, we are a little immature. But hey, love is love. After we met, we started secretly hooking up. And then finally, we broke up with them. Now that we're together, none of our friends speak to each other. They've all sided with the other friend. So he and I have been together for 6 months now. He's extremely controlling. He's always checking my Snapchat, my location, always wants to know where I am. So I started doing the exact same thing to him, mostly out of spite. Then I realized he's a little sketchy. He does not want me to have his location. So I started blocking him on Snapchat and Instagram. This drove him absolutely crazy. So much so that he deactivated his Instagram just so that I would feel more comfortable. At first I was like, OMG, he's so sweet, he loves me. But then I just realized this is another manipulation tactic on his part. I needed a way to manipulate him even more. He started coming to my house unannounced. My parents hated this. They told him that he shouldn't be doing that anymore. And he started talking bad about my parents to me. Obviously, this is a big red flag for me. I mean, I can deal with the rest, but talking bad about my parents? Hell no. Well, I was furious with him. He started telling me that my mom was crazy and that she was probably cheating on my dad, and that that's where I learned to be a cheater too. And then he started talking bad about my parents to his parents. So his mom called me and asked me if I was okay with my parents. Guess what happens? I show up to his job and there he is talking to a girl. A pretty girl. Both work at Abercrombie & Fitch. Can you imagine what she looks like? So I had to get him fired. Part 2 is story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Instead of me on Instagram. Well, I show up to his Abercrombie & Fitch job and I find him talking to a girl. Very pretty girl. I went insane. Pulled him aside and told him that he needed to quit right then and there. That if the tables were turned and I was the one talking to a really cute boy at my job, he would lose it and break up with me immediately. He started telling me that I was overreacting. I was being insecure. Me being insecure? Not him checking my phone every day. By the way, the girl was so nice to me. He came up to me later and said, "You don't need to worry about anything. I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested in yours." I did appreciate it, but the way my boyfriend was talking to her was a no-no. So here's what I did. Waited for his shift to end, and I went straight into that Abercrombie and asked to speak to the manager. And that's when I made up the whole story. I told him that this boy that was working there was harassing me, and that he kept staring at me and grabbed my arm, which made me feel super uncomfortable and scared. And the cherry on top, I started to cry. And I told him that this wasn't the first time it happened, that the same boy had done it another time. The manager, of course, apologized right away. I left the store. 2 hours later, my boyfriend calls me crying. He said that he got fired and he didn't know why. That all the manager said was that his behavior was inappropriate, and my boyfriend couldn't figure it out. Well, he's never gonna find out that it was me that got him fired. So I begged my dad to hire my boyfriend at his car shop. And my dad did, out of the kindness of his heart. So I made my boyfriend eat all of his dirty words. Not only that, but him working at my dad's car shop allows me to keep an eye on him at all times. You see, I have access to all the cameras. And I also show up whenever I want. But here's the crazier part. Remember the girl that my boyfriend was talking to? She slid into my DMs and told me that I'm pretty. She even asked me to go on a date. I mean, should I? Story time about my mom caught me doing it with my neighbor. This all happened 10 years ago. I was 7 years old. Okay, here's the thing. My dad had left my mom and I for another woman. So I was always desperate for like male attention. And looking back, this is so terrible, especially for a teenage girl. New neighbor had moved in that summer. And let me tell you, I was obsessed from the moment I saw this boy. I became so obsessed because his window was right across from mine. It was like a movie. He would see me changing, I would see him changing. Of course, I never told my mom. And then my mom actually became friends with his mom. So they started coming over for dinners, and they were both single moms, so they connected on that too. Now, this boy didn't go to my school though, so we basically only saw each other whenever we were home. Okay, here's where things get messy. He had a girlfriend at his school. This did not stop him from flirting with me. He would stand in his window changing, and because he would come over to my house, he'd come up to my room and we'd just hang out. Both of our moms had a little too much wine one night, and he came up to my room and closed the door. As soon as he closed my door, I knew something was gonna happen. He asked me if I wanted a back massage, and I was like, yeah. As he's giving me this massage, he starts asking me why I don't have a boyfriend. And that's when I told him that I'm probably gonna get a boyfriend very soon, which is a total lie. See, I don't like anybody at my school. And that's when he told me that he would be really jealous if I got myself a boyfriend. So I turned around and told him, but you have a girlfriend, so you have no business getting jealous. That's when he grabbed my face and started kissing me. We made out for like half an hour while both our moms are passed out on the couch downstairs. I knew I needed to snatch him away from his girlfriend. What I did next is crazy. Go to part 2. Story time about my mom caught me doing it with my neighbor. Once he started kissing me, we could not stop. I knew he had a girlfriend and I wanted to steal him away from her. So I thought, why not just do it with him so that he would leave her and be with me? That's when I took off his shirt, he took mine off, and things went from there. Let me just remind you that our moms are downstairs sleeping on the couch. Our hearts were racing and we were trying to do it as quickly as possible. By the way, I'm still a virgin at this point, and I just decided right then and there that I would just do it with him. I was being reckless as hell. That's when I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. We jump off each other and we just pretend we're talking. It was his mom coming to tell him that they were going home. My plan worked though. He started messaging me nonstop, and he even blew off his girlfriend that same week to be with me. I told him we could do it the following day if our moms weren't home. His mom went out to run some errands, so I asked my mom to go run me an errand. Evil much? I told him to come over and it happened. And no, it was not good. It was actually terrible. Neither of us knew what we were doing and it hurt like hell. But after that, he was obsessed. Anytime my mom left my house, he would try to come over. One of the times he came over, he asked me if he should break up with his girlfriend. And I said, yeah, you probably should. Duh. He literally called her right then and there and told her that he didn't want to be with her anymore. Then he turns to me and asks me if I want to be his girlfriend. Just to make him more obsessed, I said no. I told him I wasn't ready for a relationship. Then he started begging. He couldn't believe I said no. But this is when we both mess up. We start doing it. Part 3 is up. We start doing the dirty, but I didn't realize that my mom was home. My mom was supposed to be at work, but apparently she came home early because she felt sick. So while me and my neighbor are upstairs full on doing the dirty, my mom is downstairs making lunch. That's when the door blasts open and it's my mom holding my lunch. I have no clothes on my bed. There was no way my mom was gonna buy that we were just hanging out. My mom throws the plate of food at my neighbor. He tries to calm my mom down and tells her that he's in love with me. By the way, I was not in love with him. I mean, I liked him, but I wasn't in love. I didn't know what to do, so I just started to cry. Suddenly, my mom calmed down. I have no idea what got into her, but she politely asked him to put on his clothes and leave. As he was getting dressed, my mom told him not to tell his mom anything, that we would keep this a secret. Once he leaves, my mom confesses to me that his mom and her are in a relationship. First off, I didn't even know that my mom swung that way. Then she asked me if I loved him. I had to lie and tell her that I did, so that she wouldn't find out the truth, that I only did it with him so that he could break up with his girlfriend to be with me. My mom gave us her blessing so that he and I could go out. Like I said, this was 10 years ago. Of course, he and I are no longer together, but my mom is still with his mom, so I see him all the time. He still begs me to be with him. I just broke up with my boyfriend, so I think I might give him a chance now. I mean, I did lose my V card to him, but he cheated on his girlfriend to be with me. And he's clingy. Do you guys think I should give him a chance? I matched with a murderer on Tinder. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. All of this happened 2 years ago, and if you are on a dating app, please be careful. I matched with this really cute guy on Tinder. He said he was a doctor, and he had all of these pictures to back it up. So I completely believed him when he said he was an oncologist. I was 22 at the time, and I realized that we did have a big age gap. You see, he was 36. We talked on Tinder for a couple of days, and then we moved over to text message. And he was so charming. He was reciting poetry to me. We even discussed the movie Pride and Prejudice. Looking back now, he asked me all of my favorite things. And from there, he started talking to me about my favorite movies, my favorite actors, favorite foods. I mean, he even sent me recipes. He was perfectly charming in every single way. Finally asked me out on a date, and we went to a beautiful, expensive dinner. The restaurant was right by a river. Then he surprised me with a boat ride on the river. Date was magical, almost too good to be true. Then things just got really strange. He was texting me nonstop for 2 days, asking me how I was, literally asking me what I ate for dinner, all over me. That's when he shows up unannounced to my apartment, and he's carrying a huge duffel bag. I mean huge and super heavy. And he tells me that his apartment flooded and that he didn't have anybody else to stay with, essentially asking me if he could stay at my place. I really didn't know if I should. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? We already went on a date. I told him he could sleep on my couch, but that nothing would happen between us. He agreed and promised that he wouldn't try to make any moves on me. He comes in, puts his bag down, and just starts making dinner in my kitchen. He made soup and a beautiful salad. When I tried the soup, it tasted horrible. The first thing that ran through my mind was, oh my gosh, did he put something in this? But I couldn't believe that that would even be a possibility. We watched a movie and then I went to bed. I wake up to banging on my door at 2 a.m. Do you know how scary that is? He yells, I left my phone in there, I need to get it out. Then I realized, hold on a second, you didn't even come into my bedroom. First I pretended to be asleep just to not have to open, but then he kept banging louder. And then his voice got angry. He said, I know you're awake, just let me in. I finally said, sorry, I'm not gonna let you in, you're acting strange. Then he laughed and said, oh my gosh, stop being so dramatic, just let me in. But I did not. I didn't tell him, but I called the cops. Luckily, I live 2 minutes away from the police station. He did not know this. I went into my bathroom and told the cops to come right away. For the next 2 minutes, he went silent. I pressed my ear to the door. I could hear him unzipping something, putting stuff down, and suddenly he starts banging on the door again. That's when the cops knock on my door and he goes to open. 10 seconds later, the cops knock on my door and tell me it's safe to come out. But the cop says, be prepared for what you're about to see. I open my door and there on my living room floor, there's a plastic tarp, knives, handcuffs, whips. Apparently this guy had been terrorizing women all around town. But fortunately, he had not unalived anybody. He would SA them and then tie them up and do things. But none of these women had reported him except for me. He went to prison and called me apologizing. Be careful out there. Story time about how my husband stole my dog because I told his family that he's gay. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My husband and I had been married for 6 months before I realized he was gay. The way I found out is horrendous. Husband, almost ex, he has a gardening business. This means he works with a lot of guys. The guys that he started hiring were all very young, very attractive. Obviously, I didn't care because I never thought that he would be gay. Well, I come home one day early from work, only to find him and 3 other guys on the couch, doing different things to each other. I was horrified. I was seriously triggered and traumatized. You see, I had been essayed by 2 boys when I was in college, so walking into this literally made me vomit. Even got flashbacks. What did my husband do? The man kicked me out of the house, closed the door on me. So I proceed to start ringing the doorbell. So I decide to call 911 and say that there's 2 intruders in my house, which I mean there are. By the time the police come, they're all dressed up. Of course, it was my word against theirs. The police told me that all I could do was get a divorce. At the time, I had a 2-month-old puppy. My husband didn't really like the puppy. He was a lot of work, but it was my responsibility. After I caught him, I ran straight to his mom's house and spilled the beans. His mom and dad were furious. They called him, but he wouldn't answer his phone. Called my sister and she told me that I should just go live with her. I go home to grab my things and my puppy, but my puppy is nowhere to be found. That's when my husband told me that he probably ran away. This man refused to help me look for him. I'm filing a divorce, but it's been a month since I saw my puppy, and I know the puppy's somewhere in the house. My husband doesn't let me back into the house though, and the cops were absolutely no use. I'm planning on breaking in. I mean, what should I do? Give me advice. My stepbrother confessed that he has feelings for me, and now I'm catching feelings. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My dad was single for years after my mom and him split. I decided to move in with my dad because my mom and I don't have the best relationship. I was floored when I got to my new high school. There were so many cute boys, including my stepbrother. His mom was single and she was looking for a man. My dad and her met at a yoga class. They hit it off right away. I mean, right away. A month into their relationship, they wanted to move in together. During that month, I developed a crush on several boys, but my stepbrother was not one of them. You see, he had a girlfriend, and I am no homewrecker. But when we moved in together, we started hanging out a lot. He was making the effort to be with me all the time. First, I thought it was kind of sweet. Like, okay, we're like stepbrother and stepsister now. But no, he broke up with his girlfriend and he started hanging out with me every day after school. We started watching movies together. We were cooking together. We would do all our chores together. And then finally, our parents told us that they were engaged. So we knew this was going to be for the long run. Prom was nearing and a boy asked me out to prom. He grabbed my arm and made me swear that I wouldn't go out with this boy. And I asked him why. He said this guy was a player, that he would only try to do the dirty with me. Then he confessed that he was jealous. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I'm catching feelings for my stepbrother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my stepbrother confessed that he was jealous. I mean, I knew that he liked me, but I didn't know that he liked me. Essentially, he told me that he did not want me going out with this boy to prom because he was really bad news. So I told him that I wouldn't. Went back to the boy and told him I couldn't go to prom with him. After that, my stepbrother asked me if I wanted to go to prom with him. Okay, everyone in school knew that our parents were engaged. Essentially, we're stepbrother and stepsister. But let me tell you, after his confession, I could not stop thinking about him. I mean, his room was right across from mine. He had so many girls chasing him at school. A few days later, his ex comes up to me at school and calls me a slut. Apparently, the rumor was going around that him and I were together. This girl was not happy. When I got in his car to go home with him, I broke down and started to cry. Then he told me that he told his ex that he had a crush on me. And then we kissed. And I had never been kissed like that. He was so sweet yet so passionate. We stared at each other at the dinner table. He tried to kiss me again at home, but I didn't let him. I'm gonna have to update you guys. What should I do about this? Story time about how my date put something in my drink. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I have the worst luck with guys. I'm an extremely shy person. So I signed up to every dating app you can imagine. I matched with this guy on Hinge and he suggested that we talk for a few weeks before we even decided to meet up. And he meant like seriously talk. We texted pretty much all day long for 4 weeks. In the last week, we decided to FaceTime. At this point, I was completely and utterly obsessed with him. And then I realized that he looked like Ryan Gosling. Huge coincidence because Ryan Gosling is my biggest celebrity crush. After the 4 weeks, we decided to finally meet up. Second crazy coincidence, the bar we chose was local to both of us. Little did we know that we lived 2 minutes away from the bar in opposite directions. We went straight to the bar and started ordering drinks. We both had 2 drinks, and after 30 minutes, we ordered another set of drinks. Usually on a first date, I would never go for a third drink. I liked him so much and I was so comfortable that I decided to get the third drink. Not even 4 minutes after I finished the drink, I start feeling so dizzy and sick. He obviously noticed right away and suggested that we go get some food. We walked around the corner to a pizza place and grabbed a bite. Suddenly, I'm in his apartment. He starts kissing me and tries to go, down there, and I kept saying no. Kissing became more aggressive, eventually leading him to pin my arms down to my sides. Out of nowhere, a UPS guy shows up and starts knocking on the door trying to get a signature. I ran out of that apartment so quickly, I reported him the next day. But when they tested my blood, they said there was nothing in my system. So basically, it's my word against his. Guess what? This guy has not stopped messaging me. I need to catch him in the act. What should I do? Do you have a bestie that's a little bit toxic? Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story. When I was 20, I moved to LA. I was so broke, I had 4 jobs at the same time. I worked at a hookah lounge where I cleaned the toilets and served. I also worked at a Mexican restaurant, I walked dogs, and I was a personal assistant. The Mexican restaurant I worked at was on Sunset Boulevard. And boy, oh boy, did I meet a lot of celebrities. On one occasion, I met a girl who was in a couple of movies. Is she in movies now? No, she's not. So I would say she's like an F-list celebrity. She was the type of girl that got everyone's attention, wanted to be the life of the party. And as soon as I walked up to her table, this girl wanted to adopt me. She kept saying things like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. Right away, she was acting like my best friend. It was as if the it girl, the popular girl at high school, wanted to befriend me. I fell for it hard and fast. She had a lot of money, and because I was so broke, she would pick me up and take me places with her. She took me to a couple of industry parties. This is where her envy was showing. She introduced me to a couple of people. And by a couple of people, I mean huge celebrities. But you know how she introduced me? You guys, meet my little friend. Her name's Esther, and she's a struggling actress. She works at a Mexican restaurant. I wanted to crawl in a hole and never come out. Part 2 is up. You know that toxic bestie that we've all had? Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story. After she embarrassed me on purpose by introducing me as her little friend who works at a Mexican restaurant, I wanted to crawl in a hole and die. I was standing in front of a bunch of celebrities while this F-list celeb made me feel so small. But she was also the kind of girl that would recover really quickly. She would start complimenting me on how beautiful I was. So I would feel better about her having just embarrassed me. I would somehow just justify it in my mind. She was also the type of girl that would start telling me all of her secrets. And this is when I made a big mistake. I started trusting her with my own secrets. This is what those toxic besties want. They want you to trust them so quickly and for you to fall right into their trap. Well, I did. I talked to her about my relationship with the fiance that I had at the time, and I even confided in her about the essay that I had experienced. And before I knew it, she started copying my style. My first language is Spanish, and sometimes I answer in Spanish. If you ask me, do you want a bottle of water? Sometimes I'll say sí or no. So she started saying sí or no. And I laughed when this happened. I quickly realized that I was influencing her more than she was influencing me. On one occasion, she invited me out with her friends. Suddenly, I became the topic of conversation. All of her girlfriends started asking me about my SA and what that was like. And they started bringing up all the issues I had with my fiance. I realized that everything I had told her, she repeated back to them. I felt like an animal in a zoo. They stared at me, asked me questions, and waited for me to answer. They lived for the drama. My drama, to be exact. After that, I realized she wasn't a friend. She was a frenemy, a gossiping, drama-addicted frenemy, waiting for me to fail so that she can feed off of me. You know you have or have had that bestie. And if you still do, I think you know what you need to do. Self-care sister out. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. 11 years ago, I was set to marry a man that I'd only known for 6 months. As some of you might know, I am an actress, and that's how I met him. We were both cast in the same film as boyfriend and girlfriend. And because of this, the director wanted us to spend time together and create chemistry. The director even asked us to rehearse some of our kissing scenes, which really we only rehearsed one time. Was it awkward? Absolutely. But spending so much time together during rehearsals really did it. It's kind of hard to not develop feelings for somebody that you're working with who just happens to be attractive and you're supposed to be developing this chemistry. A few weeks later, we were dating. A few months later, we decided to move to LA together to pursue our acting dreams. But soon after we moved to LA, the cracks started showing. I am the poster child for a go-getter. I'm a hustler. I will do everything in my power to chase my dreams. His motivation was not the same. While I had 4 jobs, he had 1 job. I was paying for the bills. I was even paying for his student loans. I was sending out emails and submitting both of us to projects. Are you angry yet? Because it gets worse. I was his provider in every sense of the word. Part 2 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I was paying for the bills, providing for him, even paying off his student loans. I also cooked for him, and I also helped him by trying to find him acting jobs. I was the best possible fiance he could have ever asked for. Around that time, I decided to quit some of my jobs. I transitioned over to working at a dancing club as a cocktail waitress. And this is around the time that I asked him if he could get a higher paying job. At the time, he was working at a movie theater. He was making $8 an hour, and to him, this was enough. It was enough because I was paying for the rest. When I wanted to quit my jobs, he was against it. Why do you think? I felt like his bank account, like a debit card he could swipe every time he needed money. He would take and I would give. So when I asked him to consider getting a better job, he told me that he didn't want to because his best friend worked at the movie theater he worked at. He was comfortable. He loved his job. It was an easy job for a man. I got to watch all the free movies I wanted. What more could I ask for? A partner that would help me? No, that was too much to ask for. But can you believe that it actually does get worse? Part 3 is up. By far one of my most asked questions, how did I become an actress? If you're interested in becoming an actor, you need to listen to this. At the time I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to become an actress. Luckily, I have a very supportive family. I told my mom and she helped me. At the time I was living in Nicaragua. Took me to a local agency and I got my first commercial when I was 8. It was for a local salon and the commercial played on local channels. From that, I was able to do modeling here and there. No, this did not help me out in school. Instead, I got bullied because of this. People were just jealous and envious. When I was 14, I got cast in my first hair show. This was for the brand Wella. The show was basically one huge catwalk. I was basically the lead. From that show, my face ended up on magazine covers and newspaper covers. As a 14-year-old, it was a lot. My hair was colored orange, red, and black. I loved it. But again, this only isolated me from the people that envied me. But I did not let that stop me. When I was 17, we moved to the US. When I got there, I signed up to every single acting website I could find. This meant that I could submit myself to local projects, including soap operas, commercials, film, and TV. The next step was getting myself an agent. And that's what I did. I wasn't the type of teenager that went out on the weekends. I was constantly looking for the next job, memorizing scripts, filming myself and practicing, and driving around to auditions with my brothers and sisters. And why do I really want to share the story? I want you guys to know that even as a 16-year-old going to auditions, I was never by myself. One of my older sisters was always with me, didn't accept invitations from casting directors or producers. The fear of being in danger didn't let me put myself in positions that I might regret. If you want to become an actor or a model, you have to be diligent about what you say yes to. Never, ever, ever trust people. I know this sounds severe, but trust me, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you have to say no or defend yourself. Self-preservation was always a part of me. At 19, I decided to move to LA with my fiance. I sacrificed a lot to be in LA. I worked several jobs. 2 weeks after I got to LA, I got my first agent. And I got my agent by literally calling agencies and emailing them. And this allowed me to start booking commercials. I also decided to work as an extra. After 2 years of struggling in LA, I made the best decision ever. Decided to get myself an education. I auditioned for the Stella Adler studio in New York City. And when I got accepted, it actually changed my life. I moved to New York City by myself and became a sponge. You see, I calculated it. Every class was $50. So every time I didn't pay attention, that was $50 down the drain. My mom helped me pay for my tuition, but I also got a job to help pay for it. When I finally graduated, I got cast in a movie right away. The movie's called The Comedian with Robert De Niro. Since then, I have done movies and TV. The latest one, City on a Hill. And if there's any advice I could give you, it would be to listen to your instinct and have a good community of people that support you and actually be ready to sacrifice everything. Self-care sister out. I told my best friend that her fiance was cheating on her and she did not believe me. Disclaimer, this is my story. When I was 20 years old, I moved to LA. I was trying to make friends as quickly as possible. Good friends, not backstabbers. At my new job, I met this girl and she was kind of similar to me, but she was the type of person that trusted everybody. Right away, she started trusting me. She was just really kind. Started hanging out outside of work. And it was really nice because she liked to cook and so did I. She would come over to my place and we would make some food and just watch movies. After a couple of weeks, I met her fiance and I hated him right away. All he did was stare at me. What do you do when you meet your bestie's fiance and all he does is stare at you? It's disgusting. At first I thought he was kind of joking, but then I realized he was being super serious. He was trying to make cute eyes at me. So after that, I would never look him straight in the eye. I knew that's what he wanted, so I just wouldn't do it. That's when I started being really vigilant. I started noticing every single little red flag about him. One day, my bestie invites me over to a barbecue at her place, and after a couple of hours, I wanted to leave. Everyone at this point had had so many drinks, I was the only person that was sober. I go into her bedroom, and I find her with her sister. Part 2 is up. I told my best friend that her fiance was cheating on her and she did not believe me. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I walk into their bedroom and I see her fiance with my best friend's sister. What I actually saw was just him kissing her neck. But why is your fiance kissing your sister's neck? And as soon as they saw me, they freaked. They jumped up really quick. He ran out of the bedroom and then he just stared at me. Like he always does, just staring. I ran to my bestie and I told her everything. By the way, everyone at this point had had so many drinks. I was actually the only sober person at this party. What happened next was a nightmare. My bestie turns to me and tells me to leave the party. She told me that I was just jealous of her relationship, that I was projecting on her. She throws my purse at me and I leave. I cried so much, I was mortified. She was so desperate to make her relationship work. Okay, by the way, her sister actually lived with them at the time. This girl had no money and no job. My best friend supported her in every single way possible. Her and I obviously didn't speak after that until 6 months later. She calls me on the phone in tears. Then she tells me she finds out her sister is pregnant. Her fiance is leaving her for her sister, and they are kicking her out of her apartment, the one she paid half for. I remember this because he actually followed me on Instagram 2 days ago. Did I be petty? Self-care sister out. If you're not using toilet paper for your makeup routine, you're missing out. Welcome to episode 2 of Self-Care Sister Tips. After you apply your foundation, take 2 sheets of toilet paper and gently pat it into the skin. Do not rub it, just tap it gently into the skin. This is going to help you in 2 ways. It'll absorb excess oil, excess foundation. It's going to give you a more natural finish. So if you're a no makeup girl, you're going to love this. Then take a fluffy brush, dip it into your favorite setting powder, and lightly dab over the areas you want to mattify. Once you're done applying the rest of your makeup, repeat that step again. Yes, you can use blotting paper, but toilet paper is more absorbent. This will give you a flawless base, I promise. Self-Care Sister out. If I had a time machine, this is what I would tell my 20-year-old self. Number 1, do not trust men. I know it's unfair to say that all men are bad men, but the amount of bad guys that I met in my 20s is terrible. I'm not even talking about dating. I'm talking about work life. Don't trust the men that make promises, especially the ones they don't keep. In fact, don't trust anyone who doesn't keep their promises. You're going to meet so many people that are going to pretend to care about you, but really all they want to do is see what they can get out of you. You're going to learn this lesson 5 times in your 20s. 5 times that I gave people the benefit of the doubt. Which leads me to my next one. Don't forgive people so easily. Because the people that keep hurting you only to apologize, they're going to do it again. Every time you forgive them, it's only going to encourage them to repeat their terrible behavior. And also, you're really sweet and kind, but that doesn't mean that you have to help everyone who asks you for help. Because at the end of the day, if you were to ask them for help, are they going to? Are they going to give you the same energy that you gave them? No. And you're going to learn this lesson in your 20s more times than I can count. So stand up for yourself because nobody else is going to do it. And if you don't tell people what you're going through, no one can help you. So stop keeping everything to yourself and ask people for help. What's the worst that can happen? They're going to say no? Well, now you know who has your back and who doesn't. Also remember that just because you have a little bit of money does not mean that you should be spending it. Save your coin, girl. Don't go shopping at Urban Outfitters once a week. Yes, you got cast in a Best Buy commercial that's paying you like $15,000, but don't go spending the money before you even get paid. Be thoughtful. And don't give in to your fears that you can't do something because you're a woman. Instead of taking that Uber, walk. You're gonna be fine, girl. Learn to be comfortable out in public even if you're wearing a short dress. Stop covering your body up because of someone else's insecurity. Or because you don't want to tempt a guy. Because truthfully, most of the time, they're not even looking at you. Go to the beach and wear that bikini. Stop judging every inch of your body. And for the love of God, unfollow all those fitness girls on Instagram. The Anna Cheries, yeah, I'm talking about you. Because you don't realize this now, but they are all editing their pictures. They're all making their asses bigger and their waists smaller. So you become insecure because you're not like them. Oh, and that photo shoot you had with that one famous photographer on Instagram, that photo shoot that you were in lingerie and he asked you, where are your abs? Babe, tell him to F off and leave. You do not have to sit through a photo shoot while the photographer shames you for not having abs. In fact, don't let anybody, and I mean anybody, tell you what your body should look like. You don't need to have a bigger butt, and you don't need to have abs. Just be healthy. And please, 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 whatever you do, don't sit next to Justin at work, because he's going to develop a crush on you and not be able to deal with it when you don't like him back. He's going to get you fired. And once again, because of a man, you are suffering financially and emotionally. Spend more time with your family. Stop running away to LA to follow your dreams. It's weakening your talent and your strength. Instead, go home and recharge. Don't listen to those agents and managers that are telling you need to be somewhere. No, you don't need to. And start posting that content. You have so many ideas, really good ones, and you like editing, you have a great camera, so just do it. Stop worrying about what your followers are gonna think. And be cringe, but be consistent. Just post one video a month. You know you wanna do it, but you're embarrassed. Oh yeah, and download TikTok in 2019 instead of 2020. Oh, and give yourself the chance to feel the things you're feeling. Honor what you're feeling, because if you don't, you're just shoving everything deep down and one day you're gonna explode. And finally, ask for what you want. Don't expect people to know what you want. Ask for it. Ask for more money and ask for that support. Your family and your husband are always gonna be there. So don't be scared. Self-care sister out. My husband humiliated me at our wedding by shoving my face into our cake. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I was told that I need to rest, so I'm not filming. I have to repeat content. I'm sorry. I love you guys though. Before we got engaged, my husband and I had only known each other for 3 months. We actually met when we were traveling, so we didn't even live in the same country. This was my first mistake. After we met, he asked me to come visit him again. And I did. I didn't ask him to come visit me. He asked me. Did I pay for my own flight? Yes. Did I split the bill with him? Yes. But here's the thing. He was doing everything else right. He was treating me well, buying me gifts, giving me so much attention, acting like he was already my husband. We got engaged 3 months later and none of my friends or my family knew him. And we decided to have a destination wedding. This meant the only time my parents met him was at our wedding, and my friends. Before our wedding, he and I had not lived together. I was the one that was going to visit him all the time. In preparation for our wedding, I really wanted this one specific makeup artist. Yeah, and both of our parents decided to pay for the wedding. Our budget for the wedding was $80,000, so it was a lot. The makeup artist I wanted was $3,000. I met with the makeup artist twice. This way we could try out 2 styles of makeup. We finally landed on one that I loved. The hairstylist charged me another $3,000. So my husband knew how much effort I put into my makeup and my hair. Before the wedding, I made him swear that he would not shove my face into the cake. And he agreed. Fast forward to cutting the cake. He pushed my face into the cake so hard, I almost got knocked out. Everyone ran over to me. Part 2 is up. My husband humiliated me at our wedding by violently shoving my face into the cake. Claiming this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I'm repeating content because I was told I need to rest. I'm sorry. That's when he grabbed my neck so hard and pushed my face into the cake. Did it so violently that I almost got knocked out. And I was able to pull myself away from the cake. I started falling backward, and that's when my family started running up to me. Before I could fall, my father caught me midair. What was my husband doing? Just looking at me. That's when he yells out, "You are so dramatic." No one, and I mean no one, not even his parents, thought that it was funny. Everyone at the wedding surrounded me asking if I was okay. Even the servers offered a chair and ice. Luckily, my bridesmaids took me to the bathroom, and when I saw the state of my face and my hair, I burst into tears. $6,000 down the drain. $6,000 I was only able to enjoy a third of. The night wasn't even halfway through at that point. That's when they washed my hair and my face. I still decided to make the best of it. I spent the rest of the night dancing without makeup and hair. Did he apologize? Kind of. He said, "My bad." Didn't expect everyone to react like that. And he actually complained that now he was the bad guy. The following day, my parents convinced me to get the wedding annulled. And now he's almost my ex. I was about to leave my family to move to his country. A man that is violent towards you under the guise of a joke actually hates you. He wants to hurt you. Self-care sister out. My boyfriend confessed he thinks I'm ugly. Welcome to the confessional series where you guys send me your confessions through Instagram and I tell them on TikTok so that you can get some genuine advice. My boyfriend and I have known each other for 2 months. That's not a long time, girl. That is not a long time. You can still get away. We first matched on a dating app and I was the one to ask him out first. On our first date, he actually told me that I was really heavy. No offense, but he usually dated girls that were really fit. But this didn't stop me from pursuing him. He told me he was going to give me a chance though because I had a really great personality. Oh my god, what does this guy think he is? On our second date is when I decided to open up about my family. You see, I come from a really wealthy family. I'm set to inherit tens of millions of dollars. You told him this on the second date. That's when he changed his tune real quick. After that second date, he started calling and texting me almost every single day. Although I would text him back and he would not reply until the next day. It's almost like he was just giving me enough to make me feel a little bit loved. What a narcissist. After a couple of weeks, I asked him if he wanted to meet my parents and he said yes. He came over to our house and could not stop staring at the entire house. You see, we live on a huge estate. Multiple houses, horse stables, and even a golf course. Who is your family? He charmed my parents and they ended up loving him. My dad even offered him a job.
A couple of days later, he asked me to be his official girlfriend by taking me to IHOP. I do love IHOP, but I was definitely underwhelmed by the way he asked me. We sat down and he said, "Do you just wanna be my girlfriend? Do you just want to be my girlfriend?" I said yes. I was so happy. I could not believe it. Fast forward 2 months. He moves in with me and my parents into the left wing of the house. It was basically all mine, so we had a lot of privacy. He and my dad would leave to work together and would come back together. At this point, life could not have been better. That's when I asked him about getting married. And he said to me, "Honey, I love you, but it's kind of hard to think of you as my wife because sometimes I don't find you that attractive. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd put you at a 3. I said, "So are you saying you think I'm ugly?" And he said, "Kind of, but I still love you." Really torn because I do want to marry this guy. Why? What redeeming qualities does he have that makes you so happy? At this point, I know that I should break up with him. He's kind of freeloading off my parents, doesn't pay for rent, and doesn't even offer to pay for groceries. Break up with him. Break up. Break up quickly, too. Kick him out of your parents' house. I love you, girl, but you need to break up with him.
Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a 27-year-old male. My girlfriend is 33. We started dating 2 years ago. A couple of months in, we started talking about marriage and she sounded really open to it. My dream has always been to get married and have kids. I never thought I would fall in love this hard. I have dated girls before, but I have never put in this much effort. To tell you that I took her to meet my parents 2 weeks after I met her, and even after 2 years, I keep falling in love with her. I'm really close to my parents and I decided to tell them that I wanted to marry her. They told me to go for it. So I planned a very elaborate proposal. I even got her 2 best friends to help me. I hired a photographer, a videographer, and I got the type of ring that I knew she would love from Tiffany's. The day of the proposal, everything went perfect. She showed up looking absolutely beautiful, her friends were hiding behind a bush, and the photographer and the videographer got everything just at the right time. But guess what the problem was? She said no. She told me that she definitely didn't think we were ready for marriage or even to be engaged. This is a fundamental flaw. I don't agree with her. So 2 weeks later, I proposed again. And guess what she said? Part 2 is up. Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her. Which I know is so messed up. Because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do?
My boyfriend confessed that he thinks I'm ugly.
Here's the long requested update. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he told me that he would not marry me because he didn't consider me as pretty as I should be, I started asking him what he would change about me. Can you believe he sat down on his phone and made a list? An actual damn list. First on his list was, I was too heavy. He told me I needed to lose at least 20 pounds. I figured that shouldn't be too hard, so I got on a diet. Then he told me he preferred my natural hair color, which is brown. So I stopped dyeing my hair blonde and went completely brown. Oh yes, and his last request was that I get lip filler. He said that my thin lips have always bothered him. Then he told me I should look at more makeup tutorials to figure out how to do my makeup. And he told me that I should tan in the sun to get some nice color on me. I know you guys want me to break up with him. What if I make all these changes and I'm actually healthier and happier? Not just for him, but for me. Since I last spoke to you guys, it's been about 2 weeks. I've only lost 2 pounds, but I'm on my way. I ended up getting lip filler and I love it. My lips look pretty but not exaggerated, so it actually looks nice. I also got Botox and cheek filler even though he did not request this. And to be honest, my face looks a lot better. It actually does like my new hair though. And I started sitting out in the sun, although I will start fake tanning because I do not want to get wrinkles. Mostly because self-care sister told me not to and I trust this girl. Since making all these changes, he's actually been a little bit nicer to me. In exchange for me making all these changes, he's spending more time with me and going out less with his friends. He's even taking me out on dates twice a week. Before I started making all these changes, I was always trying to look like something I wasn't. I was obsessed with being blonde and contouring, and he basically begged me not to contour anymore. So I asked Esther to do a tutorial for me, which she said she's gonna post. I feel like all he really wants me to do is focus on my self-care, and I'm totally willing to do that. I'll have to keep you guys updated, but so far so good. I did get myself a trainer, and he actually got jealous, which I think is a good sign, right? Self-care sister out. Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate. I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her. Which I know is so messed up. Because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? Story time about how I'm the side chick and I love it. Disclaimers, not my story time is sending me on Instagram. If you're gonna be a hater, I don't care. You can judge me and be as mean as you want in the comments because I thrive off of hate. Once I had my boyfriend wrapped around my little pinky, we started talking about his wife. And this is when he told me that he does love his wife, but that he's bored in the relationship, that she doesn't make him excited anymore, and that she's more interested in their children. So I told him that I would give him everything that she doesn't. I mean, what kind of woman just ignores her man? She is so stupid for neglecting her husband and just only taking care of their kids. But that's just what I think. Like I mentioned in part 1, my boyfriend has to travel to come see me. This means we only see each other for about a week out of the month. But to be honest with you guys, I love it. I don't have to see him every single day or every single week. And he pays my rent and buys me whatever I want. And of course I have my own side pieces. I mean, a girl needs company when her boyfriend's not around. But here's the thing, my boyfriend wants me to move closer to him, and he wants to hire me as his personal assistant so that I can be around him all the time. But this means that I would have to meet his wife. He actually tried it out for a few days and it didn't go as bad. Basically, his wife liked me from the moment she met me. He didn't suspect a thing. But it was so boring having to talk to her and the kids and pretend that I was interested in his job. Like, I have no clue what he does. Anyway, I told my boyfriend that I was not going to move and that what we had was going to have to work. If not, I could drop him and find somebody else. But he's begging me to reconsider. He really wants me to be closer to his home. I mean, it's kind of messed up. What should I do? I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. When I asked him to get a higher paying job so he could help me out with the bills, he flat out said no. His job at the theater was too cozy. And a few weeks later, I experienced something horrible at the dance club that I was working at, which made me reflect on every choice I had made up until that point. I left my family to move away with somebody I didn't know, to a new city, thousands of miles away. I left my mom with major depression. To this day, I still hold so much guilt for that. And I told my fiance about the essay that I experienced at the club. His response was for me to get over it. When I told him I wanted to quit, he said no. How dare I try to quit the job that was providing for him? I broke up with him 2 days later, only to fall into an even more toxic relationship. But that's for another time. Self-care sister out. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. Well, I show up to his Abercrombie & Fitch job and I find him talking to a girl. Very pretty girl. I went insane. Pulled him aside and told him that he needed to quit right then and there. That if the tables were turned and I was the one talking to a really cute boy at my job, he would lose it and break up with me immediately. He started telling me that I was overreacting. I was being insecure. Me being insecure? Not him checking my phone every day. By the way, the girl was so nice to me. Came up to me later and said, "You don't need to worry about anything. I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested in yours." I did appreciate it, but the way my boyfriend was talking to her was a no-no. So here's what I did. Waited for his shift to end, and I went straight into that Abercrombie and asked to speak to the manager. And that's when I made up the whole story. I told him that this boy that was working there was harassing me, and that he kept staring at me and grabbed my arm, which made me feel super uncomfortable and scared. And the cherry on top, I started to cry. And I told him that this wasn't the first time it happened, that the same boy had done it another time. The manager, of course, apologized right away. I left the store. 2 hours later, my boyfriend calls me crying. He said that he got fired and he didn't know why. That all the manager said was that his behavior was inappropriate. And my boyfriend couldn't figure it out. Well, he's never gonna find out that it was me that got him fired. So I begged my dad to hire my boyfriend at his car shop. And my dad did, out of the kindness of his heart. So I made my boyfriend eat all of his dirty words. Not only that, but him working at my dad's car shop allows me to keep an eye on him at all times. You see, I have access to all the cameras. And I also show up whenever I want. But here's the crazier part. Remember the girl that my boyfriend was talking to? She slid into my DMs and told me that I'm pretty. She even asked me to go on a date. I mean, should I? Here's a story time, but I needed to sneeze first, so give me a sec. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. I'm totally toxic. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. Let me start off by saying, yes, I do love my boyfriend. I'm also extremely toxic. And honestly, he is too. Here's a little backstory. We both met when we were dating other people. In fact, he was dating my best friend, and I was dating his best friend. I'm 18 and he's 19. So yeah, we are a little immature. But hey, love is love. After we met, we started secretly hooking up. And then finally, we broke up with them. Now that we're together, none of our friends speak to each other. They've all sided with the other friend. So he and I have been together for 6 months now. He's extremely controlling. He's always checking my Snapchat, my location, always wants to know where I am. So I started doing the exact same thing to him, mostly out of spite. Then I realized he's a little sketchy. He does not want me to have his location, so I started blocking him on Snapchat and Instagram. This drove him absolutely crazy. So much so that he deactivated his Instagram just so that I would feel more comfortable. At first I was like, OMG, he's so sweet, he loves me. But then I just realized this is another manipulation tactic on his part. I needed a way to manipulate him even more. He started coming to my house and announced. My parents hated this. They told him that he shouldn't be doing that anymore. He started talking bad about my parents to me. Obviously, this is a big red flag for me. I mean, I can deal with the rest, but talking bad about my parents? Hell no. Well, I was furious with him. Started telling me that my mom was crazy and that she was probably cheating on my dad, and that's where I learned to be a cheater too. And then he started talking bad about my parents to his parents. So his mom called me and asked me if I was okay with my parents. Guess what happens? I show up to his job, and there he is talking to a girl. A pretty girl. Both work at Abercrombie and Fitch. Can you imagine what she looks like? So I had to get him fired. Part 2 is story time, but I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. As soon as I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor, I just started yelling. I needed them to know that I was in the room. How dare my dad do this in my apartment? I mean, couldn't he go to her apartment? 20 steps behind me was my mom. And as soon as I yell, she runs in. Mind you, my dad is still on top of this girl. When he sees my mom, he jumps up. The girl is completely naked, grabs her clothes, and runs over to her apartment. My dad didn't even bother to cover his dingling. It was the most horrendous thing that had ever happened to me. That's when my mom says, I want a divorce and I'm moving in with her. He didn't say a word. He calmly put his clothes back on and walked out. Didn't give an explanation, didn't apologize, nothing. A true narcissist. When he finally leaves, my mom and I start to cry. We called my sister and she came over. We went back to my parents' house and grabbed all of my mom's stuff. We didn't even have time for boxes, we just grabbed trash bags. My mom and I are living together, but guess what? My dad is now dating my neighbor. He's never apologized to my mom. They did get a divorce, thank God. We have to see him all the time at her apartment. How do I break them up? Story time, but I caught my dad doing it with my neighbor. That's when my neighbor asked my dad for his number. I turned to her and I said, he's married to my mother, you know. And then I pushed my dad into the elevator. I instantly started to cry. I was embarrassed and mortified. How can I have a father like that? I told him he was never to come to my building again and that he flirted with her first. He was twice her age. Disgusting. He told me that I was overreacting and that the only person that made it weird and gross was me. Luckily, it did not take us long to move in all my boxes. But then he kept looking for excuses to stay. I asked him to leave 3 times. And all of a sudden, the girl walks out of the apartment that was right in front of me, meaning she's my neighbor. My dad started talking to her again. That's when I closed my apartment door and locked him out. Could hear them talking for a few minutes, so I put on my music and started unpacking. And then I called my mom immediately to tell her, and I begged her to come live with me. Then she told me that she got into a really big fight with my dad about it. I was so angry, I opened my door and just left. I see my dad and her still talking in the hallway. I didn't say anything and I left. Went to pick up my mom and I took her out for lunch. My mom and I decided to go back to my apartment to unpack. I walked up to my apartment first, and as soon as I opened the door, that's when I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. My lying, cheating father helped me move into my new apartment. I have to be honest and say my dad is narcissistic. He's always been selfish, thinks he's always right. There's just no way to reason with him when he's wrong. My sister and I are very tight with my mom. We will always side with her. By the way, my parents are still married. They've been together for 37 years. My sister's 30 and I'm 22. I recently landed my dream job, and this meant that I needed to find an apartment closer to my job. So I moved about half an hour away from my parents. My dad travels for work a lot, which is the best. It means he's not home a lot. So I told my mom that she should move into my apartment with me. She said that she would think about it. My move-in day finally arrived. My mom and my sister had helped me pack and organize everything. My dad didn't lift a finger, so I asked him to help me move all the boxes into my apartment. He said yes. The moment we get into my apartment, he sees a really pretty girl, and he just starts talking to her like I'm not even there. For some reason, this girl starts flirting back. I was appalled and disgusted. She then asked my dad for his phone number. What the heck? Part 2 is up.
I don't know. Jeremy's just been so distant, and it's just really frustrating.
Yeah, that sucks.
How are you and Chad?
We're good. I feel like things have been like really steady between us. Like,
oh my god. 3 and 6 were definitely the most popular options, so we're gonna shave my brows. So option number 3 was shaved up here, and then 6 is definitely cortar la colita, you know? I don't even, how do I do this? Am I doing anything? I think I just did something, right?
Y yo tengo miedo, you know, cause like, no quiero cortar mucho, pero that's way more lifted than this and right here. This one is like, psh. I think I shaved too much off. Ay, Dios mío. I'm gonna trim this hair. What do you guys think? I don't know. Bye.
Story time about how my best friend outed me on purpose. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my best friend in the middle of the party yells out, "She's gay and you don't even know it." My dad grabbed me by the arm and pulled me into the kitchen. That's when he said, "What is that about?" And I just started crying. This was literally something I was never, ever, ever going to tell my parents. I did not want them to know that I was gay. My mom starts crying too. And that's when my dad starts crying too. That's when my mom says, "I've known it all this time." Then they started asking me why I was doing this to them, why I was being such a bad daughter. That's when my best friend and her parents come into the kitchen and they told my parents that everybody should just go home. They told all the guests to leave, and then my best friend took me to her house. Guess what? My parents didn't want to speak to me after that. They reproached me every single day. They even wanted to send me to a camp to get rehabilitated. Of course I said no. Oh yeah, and remember the boy they promised me to? My parents invited him and his parents over for dinner, and this guy tried to kiss me again. He got me alone in the laundry room and literally went to town. I pushed him away and threatened him. This guy's literally crazy. As soon as I turned 18, I moved out. My parents don't really speak to me, and I broke up with my bestie. She's always begging me to forgive her. Should I? Story time about how my best friend outed me on purpose. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After this boy forced me to kiss him and then tried to fondle me, told me that he and I were going to get married because my parents told him. Just keep in mind, I'm 16 at the time. So while my parents are trying to keep me away from bad influences, they are throwing me into the arms of a boy who's literally harassed me. At my coming out party, told him to never touch me again. I ran back into the party and he chased me. Finally went up to my parents and told them what happened. That's when my father sided with the boy. He said that we were going to get married. So it was all true. My bestie and her parents were at the party. They could hear what I was telling my dad. I'm obviously in tears at this point. I mean, I just got harassed at my party, and my parents don't want to do anything about it. It's like this kid has permission to do whatever he wants because we're gonna get married. My best friend came up to my parents and told them that she needed to talk to them, and I knew right away what she was gonna try to say. I pulled her away and told her to just leave it, that I would handle the situation on my own. And trust me, I understand where she was coming from because she loves me, but she had no right to do what she did next. I asked my parents to tell the guests to leave, but no, we had to keep up appearances. And my bestie yells out, "She's gay and you don't even know it." Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend outed me on purpose. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My ex-best friend and I have known each other for 10 years. The problem is we come from very different backgrounds. Her parents are super liberal. She got a tattoo when she was 15. Her parents took her to get the tattoo. They've given her all the freedom in the world. My parents are the opposite, super strict and religious. I knew I liked girls from the age of 8 years old. Watched a movie with Jessica Alba. Need I say more? I knew that this was going to be hard for my parents. So that's when I decided I would never tell them. I would just wait to move out and date whoever I wanted. But my best friend thought differently. When I was 13, I came out to her parents. They were incredibly supportive. They even gave me the birds and the bees talk. Parents were basically like my parents. When I turned 16, my parents wanted to have a formal gathering. You see, we're from the South, a place where debutante balls still exist. My parents at the time were trying to force me, and I'm serious, they were forcing me to date a boy. It would be kind of like an arranged marriage. Comes from a rich political family, so we were the perfect match. At my coming out party, parents were forcing me to dance with this boy. Dance with him for a song, then took me to the backyard and forcefully tried to kiss me. Out of nowhere, he started fondling me. Then he told me that I was his and that my parents want us to get married. Part 2 is story time about how I became a yacht girl. Here is the definition in case you don't know what it is. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. As soon as I get on the yacht, I see 2 very, very famous Insta models. Can't say the name, but they were extremely famous. Like, you would recognize their face right away. I was so nervous when I got on the yacht, my knees were trembling. One of the other girls, who I didn't actually recognize her face, this girl read me like a book. She knew I was a first timer, so she took it upon herself to explain to me what was gonna happen. I appreciated her help. This day, her and I are besties. Told me when the billionaire would arrive, we would basically just party. Even if I didn't want to party, I had to party. But I was ready for it. Told me to have fun, and that if there was anything that I didn't want to do, that I should just go to her so that I can discuss it with her. Oh boy, and I did. All of the girls and I kind of talked, and we chose our bedrooms. Then the billionaire showed up. To my relief, he was young, he was hot, and super famous. And he was super fun right away. He talked to us like we were all his friends. There was nothing romantic about it. Let me just tell you how big the yacht was. It had 8 bedrooms, a medium-sized pool and a jacuzzi, and literally the most amazing kitchen. Part of the fun was actually getting to hang out in the kitchen. A few of the girls and I decided to cook. The chef on the yacht was amazing. Basically taught us a bunch of stuff. Remember I told you the lady that got me the job told me not to take a suitcase? Well, when I opened my closet, it was full of designer dresses. And there was also skincare and some makeup. And a lot of bikinis, like I said. The only requirement was that we wear bikinis all the time. And I had no problem with that. There was always music on, and we were always able to just do whatever we wanted. That's when the billionaire came up to me and told me that I was really pretty and that he wanted to talk to me. We sat at the front of the yacht and we talked for about 2 hours. We started talking about marine life.
I graduated from marine biology, so he was super interested in everything I had to say. I was pleasantly surprised to see how respectful he was. There was nothing weird or even pervy about him. Like, he was just a regular dude talking to a regular girl. After the 2 hours, they had dinner for us ready. That's when all of the girls and I got dressed up and we looked fabulous. But you guys, I caught feelings for this dude so quick. I'm not even joking. The entire dinner, I couldn't stop looking at him. And he noticed. I'm sure this was his tactic, you know? Get me by myself and talk to me about life, so that I could just fall in love with him. Well, let me tell you what I did. I made sure to sit next to him the entire night. And then, you know what? I made around $60,000 for that job. After that, I decided to do yachting about once a month. I was getting so many offers that I couldn't keep up. But at the same time, I did want to prioritize my parents. I made more than $1 million my first year, paid off all my parents' debt, and I paid off the mortgage on their house. Remember the billionaire that I went on the first trip with? I see him almost every single month. He always flies me out to wherever he is, but no, he does not want a relationship. I'm not trying to be one of his baby mamas. I definitely don't want to do this too much longer though. The billionaires and millionaires are not always good looking guys. They're not always nice, let me tell you. This one guy slapped me once because I didn't want to go into a bedroom with him, so I'm starting my own businesses. Can you guess who some of the yachting girls are? Hi! Story time about how I became a yacht girl. Here's the definition if you do not know what a yacht girl is. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Repeat, this is not my story time. I blew up on Instagram back in 2016. The amount of men that I had in my DMs was disgusting. Rich men, poor men, whatever kind of man you can think of, they were in my DMs. I quickly realized the effect that I had on men, especially the rich ones. Little backstory. Back then I had a friend who was an ESCORT. If you don't know what that means, please Google it. This girl would tell me all the time to join the agency that she was with. I just couldn't bring myself to doing that. She did make good money, but it wasn't good enough. Now, she did tell me that she never slept with the guys, but I knew better. I'm what you would call an Insta model. I know, so 2016. That's the simple truth. Started getting a lot of modeling work through my Instagram, and I started working with some brands. But this was not enough money for me to pay my rent and help my parents out. At the time, I didn't have anybody managing my social media, whereas now there's a million agencies. Back then, I was just figuring it all out on my own. Fast forward to 2017. Remember that friend I mentioned who was an ESCORT? Told me about this thing called yachting. It's when girls go on a yacht, sometimes one or many rich men. They are paid to stay on that yacht to entertain and be companions to these men. She was gonna do it for the first time, so she told me that she would let me know how it went. A month later, she comes back home. You guys want to guess how much she was paid? She got paid $80,000 to spend a week on a boat, traveling the Greek islands, eating really good food, and she even got a diamond bracelet out of it. When I asked her what she had to do, she just raised her eyebrows. She didn't say anything, but she told me that she had a great time and that luckily the guy who hired her was pretty young and very attractive, and also very famous. The type of fame that if anybody found out what he was doing, he would immediately be canceled. I decided to do it myself. She gave me the number to this one woman who basically connected all these rich people to yacht girls. I messaged her and then I had to send her all of this information. I even had to go get blood work done. This was legit. She sent me back some paperwork and that was it. Not 2 days later, she called me for a job. She said, grab your passport and your purse. That's all you're gonna need. Obviously, I had to take my skincare with me, so I took a little carry-on. She told me it was gonna be me and 4 other girls, that we would spend 4 days with the billionaire on his yacht. I got paid $5,000 up front, and as soon as I got on the boat, I recognized 2 of the girls. Very famous Instagram girls. Very famous. Part 2 is up.
Part 3 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he hands me the blank check, I look at it and tell him that I simply cannot accept it. That's when he gets really angry, snatches the check from me, and tells me that he'll see me later. After the graduation ceremony, I was so happy and I was with my family. That's when he walks up behind me and asks me to keep the check. My family is watching this whole thing go down, by the way. I look at him and say thank you, but no. He then introduces himself to my family. But of course, he doesn't bring up the whole check thing. We all say goodbye and my family and I go have dinner. That very night, he sends me a message on Facebook again, saying that he shouldn't have given me the check. And he felt like he had crossed the line. I actually felt really bad, so I replied asking him to not feel bad. A week later, I get a text message from him. He said that he took the liberty of looking up my phone number and that he actually really wanted to speak to me. He asked if we could meet up for a coffee, and I said yes, unfortunately. We meet up at the coffee shop, and as soon as we sit down, he starts to confess his feelings for me. He said that I was basically his dream girl and that all he wanted was a wife like me. And he also asked me if I would ever consider dating him. I was actually too stunned to speak. As soon as he realized I wasn't saying yes, he asked me not to say anything, got up and left. I ran home and told my parents everything. My parents were really angry. My dad went straight to the cops. The cops told my dad that they had complaints from other students. He apparently did the same thing to them and asked them out once they graduated. And guess what? One of them said yes. The cops even investigated him after. Part 2 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Trigger warning, if you find this subject gross, please don't watch. And disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my principal started asking me if I was dating any boys or if I had any crushes on boys. I obviously felt very uncomfortable when he asked me this, so I simply answered no.
Then he told me that I could be honest with him. That's when I told him that I made my parents a promise because I was so close to graduating high school and avoid any distractions like boys. That's when he said that I was an amazing woman and that he wished more of the female students were like me. I quickly got in my car and went home. By the way, I was 2 months away from graduating from high school. Now this is when things start to get really weird. I started seeing him around everywhere in school. Our school was pretty big, but I kept bumping into him everywhere. Every time I would see him, he would be like, "Ho ho, are you stalking me?" I would laugh it off and continue walking. One day after history club, he asked me to come to his office with him. He said that he had a surprise for me. He took me to his office and gave me a book on history. I thanked him and tried to leave as quickly as possible, but then he said, "Don't you like it?" So I stood there having to pretend that I was happy that he gave me this book, when in actuality, it made me really uncomfortable. That's when he said that he had seen me in the library reading a book on World War II, and that he just wanted to surprise me with the same book. So this was already letting me know two things. Number one, he's watching me around school and at the library. And number two, I'm not noticing when he's watching me. I was so creeped out, but I managed to keep my cool. I said thank you again and basically ran away. For the rest of that week, I tried to avoid him as much as I could. I didn't go anywhere near his office, and I avoided the library, which was one of my favorite places in the school. At this point, graduation was only a week away. I was totally wrapped up in my studies that I actually forgot about the principal. Until one day I get a friend request from him on Facebook. At first I thought it was weird, but then I accepted because I figured, well, I'm graduating, so I'm not really going to be seeing him anymore. 5 minutes after I accepted his friend request, I get this really long message from him praising me, saying all these great things about me. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said thanks. Finally, the day of graduation came and I was forced to see him face to face. That's when he told me that he actually had another gift for me. That's when he hands me an envelope with a blank check. He had the biggest smile on his face. I told him I couldn't accept it and he got mad. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. TW, if you think this is gross, don't watch. And disclaimers, this is not my story time. It's been 10 years since this happened, but when I was in high school, I was really popular. I was in the cheerleading squad, the badminton team, the volleyball team, and drama club. All the teachers knew me and I got along with almost all the students. I never had any problems with girls or guys. My high school principal was a huge history buff, and so was I. One day I went to his office and asked him if I could start a history club. He was really impressed by this and he said yes. I started asking students if they wanted to join, and mostly it was only boys. And these were the boys that I knew had a crush on me, but I made a promise to my parents that I would focus solely on school and not boys. So that meant no boyfriends for me. And I was totally fine with that. I wasn't boy crazy or anything. I really just wanted to get into a good college and make my parents proud. After I formed the club, the principal asked me if he could sit in on some of the sessions. I said, of course. Our history club would get together every Wednesday, and he would always show up without fail. I mean, obviously, I thought that he was interested in history, and he just wanted to share this experience with us, but clearly I was wrong. After a few weeks, things were getting a little strange. When it was my turn to read, I would always notice him staring at me. And he also brought up the fact that there were only boys in the club. I explained to him that they probably just had a crush on me and that at least it was a way to get them into the club. He told me I needed to find girls because I was too much of a distraction for the boys. But the way that he said it just sounded like he was really jealous. I did my best to get girls in the club, but literally nobody wanted to join. After a few days, I realized that maybe the best thing for me was just to cancel the club. I was already in so many other clubs, and I didn't want to sacrifice my grades. I basically told the guys that we weren't going to have the club anymore, and they all said that was totally fine. But when I told the principal, he flipped out. He started yelling at me and told me that if I didn't keep the club going, that I would never make it in life. He said I wasn't being responsible and that I was letting down the club. So then I was basically forced into continuing the club. But then things got even stranger. He started showing up to every single get-together. And every time that it was over, he would ask me if he could walk me to my car. I mean, at first I thought he was just doing it so that I could be careful, I guess. But we were still on school property and I'm pretty sure nothing was gonna happen to me. That's when he started asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I liked any boys. Part 2 is up.